Hello, hello, and welcome to Exhale with Regina, women owning their voices. I have two amazing women on here who have owned their voices. Exhale with Regina is truly about women who have owned their voices through adversities, challenges, and wins. And these two women can honestly and authentically talk about their stories with us. Before we came on, we had a word of prayer. I must admit to you, is that I find that when I set it off in prayer, it's the best thing. And it just reminds me that God has blessed us so with so many talents and abilities and gifts. And that's what it's all about because every woman has a gift, a talent, and an ability to do something great in the earth. And great in the earth doesn't mean that we have to be seen. What it means is that we're using our gifts, that it is beautiful. And it is not the beauty we are talking about on the outside, but we're talking about the beauty on the inside that's connected to our purpose. And these two women have found their purpose and they're continuing to grow in their purpose. So welcome Monica Morgan and Linda Hannon.
Thank
Woo-hoo!
you.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes, yes,
Regina. Thank you so
yes.
much for this opportunity.
Yeah, and thank
Yes,
you for being on,
appreciate
my
it.
sister. So I want to read to everyone their bios, and I have my phone, so I'm going to be honest. I don't have a teleprompter, but I do have my phone where I can read their bios to you. Monica Morgan, known for her distinct style of world-class images of celebrities, heads of state, pop icons, and historic events. Photojournalist Monica Morgan is more than a photographer. She sees what others don't see. She captures what others can't, whether she's freezing history or making it. Monica Morgan lives life through the lens. Her lens, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, Monica earned her communication degree from Wayne State University, where she had a full academic scholarship. She began taking photographs to go along with freelance articles. She was writing for news and publicity, including for the Detroit News and a weekly column in the Detroit, Michigan Chronicle newspaper. By 1990, photography was her full time passion and profession, overshadowing and replacing freelance writing. Although writing was no longer her means of delivery, the focus on journalism was still there. She began telling vivid and compelling stories with her camera. Throughout her career, Monica's drive to know Detroit I'm sorry, to tell visible stories has made her one of the most well known Detroit area photographers, if not the most well known in certain inside circles. She is undisputably among the world's most highly recognized and accomplished African American female photographers. Woohoo! So, you know what, Monica, I have to admit to you, your bio reads so well. It
Yeah.
reads very well. So thank you for that. Linda Hannon is a senior commercial contract analyst for ITC Holdings Corp and a graduate of University of Michigan Dearborn with a background as a hat designer. And that's how I met Linda at a conference talking about her hats, and founder of Hat Moments. Linda has educated and entertained audience about the history of hats across various organizations and venues. She has a unique way of blending what different has mean in life with the way we think and speak to with the way we think and speaks to inspire, motivate, and demonstrate resiliency. Linda is a contributing writer of A Widow's Resilience, having experience wearing a hat of loss and later a hat of resilience. I love that. She knows how we can change our hats to calm the soul and have a better outlook. Thank you so much, Linda Hannon, for being a part of Exhale
Thank you.
with Regina. I love both of you being here because when you talk about resilience, when you talk about moving through adversity, when you talk about, uh, you know, different, both of you are in different fields where you have made a difference. I mean, you guys are the epitome. So I just want you to know it's an honor for both of you to be here. So, Linda, I want to get started with you. I always ask the first question. Tell me about how you got started in your brand. And please move us into now what you're doing new.
Okay, well, thank you. So excited to be here. Well, I have to go back a little bit and talk about this whole month is about love and talk about some love deposits, is what I consider that were made in my life pretty early. I had models of a father and an uncle who the word back then was self-employed. I heard my dad say, "Yes, I'm self-employed." Didn't know anything about the word entrepreneur. My dad was a TV repairman, and our home was in the middle of an East Side Detroit neighborhood. My parents were blessed to find a home that had a shop made onto it. And that shop is where he set up and he serviced the community by repairing TVs. I loved, as a little girl, I would go from the basement up to his shop because it was connected. And he'd sit me on a stool and I'd pretend like I was repairing TVs and little picture tubes. And had this huge window there that with a big clock in it said T.L. Garrett TV Repair. So I grew up with entrepreneurship right in my face all the time. At the same time, my mother's only brother, Uncle Walter, to me, was known as Mr. Hollywood on the east side of Detroit. He had one of the first unisex barber and beauty shops on, it was Harper near Gratiot. It was called Mr. Hollywood's. And he
Okay.
was so popular, and people from all over, especially on the east side, knew him. And so they were very successful. And I literally watched them service the community. I had examples of great customer service. I would go with my dad on TV repair jobs where he would take the TVs in, and I'd sit there while he conversed with the customer. So all these deposits were being put in me to see a way to take care of his family as well as service the community. So later on, around 11 or 12, I learned how to sew. I began doing crafting. And then later
Oh,
on, after I got married young and had 3 children, I was an at home mom homeschooling, but I wanted some money, extra money to make. So that's where my crafting came back in. And I started a home based business called Uniquely Yours. And I used to make all kind of not hats then, actually. I was doing crafting, sewing, crocheting, and all those things. And I would go out to different venues and craft shows and I would sell my wares. Eventually, I landed into millinery and took millinery classes from the late Mertez Millinery in Detroit that was on Woodward near Canfield. And my first and late husband got into business with me. We started a business making and designing hats for many years for boutiques, even some hats out in Texas and various places. So they've been
wow.
in a lot of fashion shows. It's just been a lot of fun and a great way to meet some fantastic people as well and service the metro area.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you for reminding me. We are talking about Black women in love. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
You know what? And so let me say this. Still unique, the things that you are doing, and now so even with doing hats, Linda, you said that I read that you spoke all over, and so now you're taking this to another level. Tell us about that.
Yes, actually, over the last 2 or 3 years, I really felt just a desire in me to inspire and motivate. And I just kind of naturally do that with people and encourage people. I've just kind of was that kind of little girl, didn't know. My mom told me she went to pick me up from school one day, and the teacher said, Mrs. Garrett, Linda's in the back helping the kids put their raincoats and boots on, you know. So I was always back there helping the other little kids. And so I had this inkling for it. And then at my church, you know how there's the Myers-Briggs test that we've all heard about. Many of us have done it. There's
Right.
also different type of tests that a ministry may do to kind of get an idea of what area you might serve in. And there are 2 words that came out of the results of that test. And the 2 words were motivating happiness. And I thought, oh, yes, I mean, that's me, motivating happiness in others. And so I actually hired a coach last year and began working on a keynote to learn to develop a signature speech to help me develop more into hats, talking about hats. because in my heart, and I have this idea of the various type of hats that we all wear as we navigate life. So I really
Yes.
use hats as a metaphor. Like some people wearing a hat of, imposter syndrome, and but it has a lot to do with the way they're
Mm.
thinking, or how are we talking to ourselves when we're wearing this hat of negative self-talk, and then that's bringing us down. And I talk about how to shift from a negative mindset to one of confidence and courage, moving
Wow.
forward through navigating through challenges, and has to do with that way the hats we wear and really the thoughts that those hats are delivering to us.
That's wonderful. I'm gonna come back to you because you make a very good point. Here we have some, and then I'm gonna go to Monica, Barbara Brooks. Here we go. She said, "These ladies' labors of love are intriguing." All right,
Oh,
welcome,
thank you.
Barbara. So Monica, tell us about your brand story and how things got started. So let me do say, I watched Monica get started with her brand story. So I was from the inception of watching and just to love, that Monica even had for her grandmother. So I had a chance to watch that when we were younger.
My brand story. Well, I think back to just a year ago when I was in a movie theater and I was watching the biopic of Aretha Franklin. At the end of the movie, I was shocked to see a photograph that I had taken of Aretha Franklin laying on Smokey Robinson's shoulder. It was the full length of the screen, and it was my photograph. And people, the first
Wow.
thing people would say to me, "Did you get paid for it?" Okay, all right, that's second. The first thing was, "Oh my gosh, it's my photograph that I took a
I know
moment."
that's right.
For real.
And yes, I did get paid through Getty Images. They had negotiated the deal. I didn't even know it was in the works, but
All
I did
right.
get a check from it. But the thing was just being able to capture that moment and knowing that, well, Aretha's not around anymore. So to have that image selected just meant so much to me. And that is one of the things that I take honor in or pride in, having people that are iconic, legendary, people that have
Yeah.
selected me to document them in their photography. And so, what I've been doing lately is taking those moments and turning them into mini posts on LinkedIn or maybe on Facebook. So, I've been telling a little bit about the story behind the photo. I had given up writing and focused on photography. I didn't think I could write anymore. So, what I decided to do was take after the bloggers, just speak my heart and write like I speak. And so it's been working, it's been drawing people in. And that means a lot to me because I was afraid to write again. So I'm
Oh,
finding
wow.
my love of writing. So I don't worry about this may not be right, that may not be right. I just write, I just let it go. And recently I did a post on LinkedIn sharing my love with my
Yes.
husband. And so far it's gotten over 1 million and almost 200,000 engagements and views. So
Wow.
that
That's
says a lot to
incredible.
me. Yes, it says a lot to me.
Monica, what was that like when you look? Because when you post that, you wasn't expecting that, right?
No, it was our Anna, it would have been our 10th anniversary. And I was releasing those emotions. I had a therapist who helped me through my grief, Dr. Pauline Furman. And she said to
Yeah.
me, instead of grieving that the person has passed on the day they've passed, or just simply celebrate the fact that they lived. And so, although it was our anniversary and not the passing of his death or his death, I'm sorry, yeah, mm. I I simply honored that he had lived and talked about our love, and it got me through it. But I was amazed that I'm still getting messages from people who are saying to me, "Thank you for giving me courage. Thank you for giving me hope. Thank you for making me rethink the relationship that I'm in." Even people who are going through cancer with their mates right now, they're reaching out to me. So I'm just, I'll say that I'm happy and honored that I can help people through something that I have struggled through.
Yeah, just let me stick with that for a minute because I read some of the posts. It was amazing. And there were even women who had lost children who said that you were giving them the courage. And none of that was expected. And it's just awesome how God would take a story and make it bigger than you. to touch lives.
Yes, that is such a great way of putting it, Regina. And let me say this to you. With you being a counselor, I didn't realize that at the time when I was searching for someone, through my grief, someone told me, go to Dr. Furman, she's going to help you. And so oftentimes when you're in that situation, you haven't planned. You just, whatever, whoever somebody says is good, you reach out to them.
That's right.
So
Yes.
let me just say that perhaps one of the things I could say to people today is find someone like Regina that you're comfortable with,
Oh,
that can
thank
help you
you.
through whatever it is you're going through, so that you don't have to search in the moment. You can just
Yes.
prepare. You prepare for things that happen just like you prepare for anything else. Just
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. Linda, you talked about hats. When I was in high school, and we putting on different hats, and the hat of being what do they call it? The imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
Or the hat of insecurity, or that's really powerful. So I want to come back to you about that because we do, and I used to hear it in a mask. We all wear a mask, and it was I think that is by Thurgood. No, I'm sorry. Oh, Paul. I cannot think of his name. Black poet.
Oh,
I, Paul. His first name is
um,
Paul.
yeah.
I can't get the last name, but the mask. I believe he. But I'll find out and I'm gonna post it. Talked about us wearing masks, but you put it in terms of us wearing hats. Um, so how did you correlate that? How did you bring that together?
Really, I just believe the Lord gave that to me in my heart. I really do, because I don't think it's anything I could have really thought of myself. And one thing I think about as entrepreneurs and how God has blessed us all with various gifts, we don't just wake up and think of these things ourselves. Like with Monica, her gifting, I mean, she didn't wake up years ago and say, I'm going to be this great photographer. God deposits gifts into us and blesses us all with different talents. And then they rise up in us and we feel the desire to do these things. We don't always know why, but then we can like, wait a minute, I didn't come up with this idea myself. So as one that's been working on hats and fitting hats on women's heads all the time,
Yeah.
almost like a hairstylist. I've heard different stories or people share different things, especially with repeat customers. And so you realize that people sometimes are wearing various hats. I mean, we wear these typicals. We're in roles like mother, father, or caregiver and volunteer. But the hats that I'm talking about really has a lot to do with the way we're thinking and what we're carrying. Like, for
Yes.
example, the hat of imposter syndrome. Some people are literally are wearing that hat and they feel like they don't measure up. They have to take more accreditation. And if I only do this, in fact, I dealt with the hat of imposter syndrome for a little bit, dealing with actually presenting on the history of hats. And I'll tell you why. My degree is in business. My degree is not in fashion and history. But yet there are historians out here, right? People who went to college for that. And there's always that little 15-minute Q&A at the end of your little presentation, right? And I remember one time thinking, oh my goodness, what if there is a hat like a fashion historian in the audience, and they're gonna know that maybe she didn't know that, or she should know this and that. But some of the things that came to me about shifting my way of thinking is, first of all, no historian recalls everything. That's period. That's number one.
Right.
Okay, no one. Number two, I have the ability to share from my experience. I've been sewing since I was 12. I've been watching classical movies forever and know about the shoulder pads, the narrow shoulders, the wide shoulders, and various tucks and all kind of things with the war and things that changed fashion history. So I know enough. And you have to tell yourself that. You have to say, I didn't get here just by circumstance, just by osmosis. I got here by doing something, contributing, having and making a difference in the lives of others. So yes, I am qualified. So you can flip off that hat of imposter syndrome, because it doesn't belong to you. And it really shifts you over into the way you're thinking. How do we talk to ourselves? I mean, what are we saying to ourselves during the day? We don't, there's the hat of, I talk about a hat of competition and comparison. And someone once said that comparison has been and always will be the thief of all joy. Now, I tell
Yes.
you this, not one of us would allow a thief to come in and intentionally take. I mean, you're not going to allow someone to just walk in your door and take
That's
anything.
right.
Yet we can think in some ways that we're allowing ourselves, if you're comparing yourself, you're robbing your own self. And it's like almost taking a hat and pulling it down over your head. You're shrouding out everything else with this little 1920s cloak on your head, right? You can't see it out of anything. And it actually, another thing I talk about is none of us would wear shoes that's too tight, and you sure wouldn't wear a hat that's too tight. So if you put a hat on your head that's too tight, it's going to put a line across it. That's pressure. Our physical heads were not, they weren't meant for pressure like that. So
Wow.
actually your soul is not meant for pressure like that either.
Well,
We're
you
not
go
meant
ahead.
to put a lot of pressure on us. So we have to learn how to shift by changing the way we think. And with some people, that may be prayer, maybe affirmation, that may be journaling, that may be disconnecting from technology. There are various ways. And I share and just offer hope and encouragement to people
Well,
along the way.
thank you. That was very inspiring, my sister. I love it. Barbara gave me the name Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Barbara. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Barbara.
And Barbara said, I love the analogy. That is very true. And, I want to go to Monica now because when I think about that, Monica, the imposter syndrome, and then that hat of comparison and then insecurity, but yet we have the hat of win, and we have the hat of love. But oftentimes Black women can be seen in various lights, and not always great lights, Monica. And you being out there with the camera and seeing many things and looking through the lens, I'm sure you have captured so many stories. Can you kind of speak to you being a Black woman, and how that has played out and how you see us through the lens?
Oftentimes, when I have a camera, I look for the best side, the hat that shows that wonderful inner personality that reaps of love and giving and warmth. And so when I take a person's image, I want to capture that. I want to capture them in the best light. So I keep looking for
Mm,
the right angle to make sure that that happens. Sometimes we find people are not in their best light. Maybe it's a bad day, so I give them a pass, but I still try to find that image that shows them in their best light. I can say that having been Rosa Parks's personal and official photographer, she was always the same. In front of the camera, behind the camera, she always wore that hat of like a mother in a church, one of those mothers. I
yes.
have a photograph of her actually in a white cap that she wore. She was in I can't think of the African Methodist church. And so she wore one of those white kind of bonnet type hats as a mother of the church.
Okay.
So she wore that same hat. She was quiet in front of the camera. She was quiet behind the camera, but yet she had a strength about her. There was nothing weak in her being quiet. As her book called her, quiet strength. That's who she was, but she was always the same. I remember once we were in the Bahamas, we were celebrating her birthday there, and we were in an elevator. We were all exhausted. And instead of the elevator going down, it went up. And Mrs. Park said, well, if it goes up, it's got to come back down.
All
She was
right.
positive when she probably should have been the one who was the most tired. So it made us stop and think. And I just think that's a great hat to wear. And Linda, I just love your analogies of hats. These
Yes.
hats are classy. And I love wearing hats, but I can't wear them because I always have a camera and a hat gets in the
Oh,
way.
that's right.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Monica. And just sticking with you for a second, and I know that you mentioned that you can be shy, you're an introvert, and your career has really pushed you out there. How did you break down those barriers within yourself?
Well, first of all, I do what you advise us to do, and that is to breathe. As a matter of fact, when you were saying you were about to ask me another question, I took a deep breath, and that gets me through most things because I'm an introvert and people don't really get that. So I speak through my camera. When I'm going to an event, oftentimes people want to stop and talk to me. And I may rush by. I'll say, hi, I gotta go, gotta go. That's my way of coping because I'm an introvert. So I've pushed myself lately to talk more to people so that I can gain a deeper connection. However, I do remain focused when I'm shooting. That's important because I almost missed the photograph of Coleman Young kissing a lady who had hired me to document her birthday party because I was talking to someone. So that taught
Okay.
me the power of focus. So I breathe, I focus, and I try to keep on point.
Okay, good. That's awesome. You know, Linda, you have brought up being a widow, your late husband, and you guys making hats together. And, you know, to hear that and to hear that you're keeping that legacy going, what inspired you just to keep moving in that direction? Because, you know, you could have folded it up and said, you know, this was something we shared together. Tell me about that and how you continue to move in love.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because after he passed, I actually did stop making hats for a while.
Okay.
It felt strange to, we had like an area set up in the basement that he had set up where we could block hats, felt hats, straw hats, and such. So now I moved right after he passed. So let me just say that. So I was at in a different a place, but still those hat blocks would have been like on the lower level. And I went down there one time just to try to like kind of get back into it, but it felt weird kind of doing that by myself. And so I just kind of lost the desire to do that to the level that I had been doing it. And so I would make a hat for like a friend, a girlfriend, or my mom, sister, of course, anyone in the family or someone getting married. I do special things like that. But I also believe there was like a season that eventually just passed. It was a season almost like, and I can say this a little bit. So I was at home for a while, and then I, started this business making and designing hats. But we did that several years, and then I went back to school because I had never gotten a college degree, and it was something I wanted to do. So I worked at in Dearborn, and I went to Henry Ford Community College, and then next I went to U of M Dearborn and got my degree, and then
Okay.
got back into making hats. So it was almost a season of making hats, a disconnect to get fulfill a desire that I had wanted to do, and then getting back into hats. Things had shifted somewhat in Michigan in 89, 90, all through that period. Some of our hats were at down in Greektown and the International Center of Apparel Design. Reggie and Brandy Gibson had a place there called Eli Image, and our hats used to be in there with Beulah Cooley and other local Michigan
Wow.
designers. And so our hats would be there, and they did phenomenal. And back then, they were on. It was a show called the Kelly and Company Show. That probably really dates me because it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But
Yeah.
some
I
models were
remember
on
the
there.
show. Monica nodded.
Just at my age. Anyway, so that program was going strong there, and the hats did just phenomenal. But there was a period where there was kind of like a plateau with that. Kind of reminds me a little bit when I talk about the history of hats and how hats were so popular. And back in the 30s and 40s, women
Mhm.
went to the market with gloves, purse, fur. I mean, they were looking sharp going to the market. Okay. And so, but things changed in the 50s and 60s because all of a sudden women got hairspray in their hair. In fact, hairspray and wig sales just went up like crazy. And then what happened is hat sales started to fall. So
Okay.
all these hairstyles over here, women are not going to put hats on them. So I mean, I don't have the number in front of me right now, but the percentage was just off the chain. So milliners back then had to start getting creative. And I will say what they did. So if you see some old movies or you're in a vintage shop and you see some old hats that look like just a bunch of curly flowers or squirrely little things, it's because milliners started making hats that look like wigs because they were losing market share and they had to start to make hats that women would still buy. And so it kind of reminded me. So when 89, 90s came, women, most of our clientele were church hats, Baptist church women, Church of God in Christ. And we
Okay.
made some unique, I mean, one hat looked like Noah's Ark, but that's what the person wanted. So that's what was made. So it was always very interesting and never a dull moment. And so anyway, that season, I kind of went off target there, but that season sort of passed. But I did talk. I was talking to the Lord one day, and I said, Lord, now I know you blessed me with this ability to make and design hats and a love for hats and history, but I don't feel that it's just supposed to just stop totally and just nothing else happened with hats. That's just how I was talking to him. And then it would just came to me after a period of time is Well, you've been asked to talk about the history of hats, how that kind of started. I would have my hats would be in fashion shows, right? Or the charitable events. And a couple
Okay.
times the commentator might not show up. So they'd say, Linda, can you commentate? I say, well, sure, because it gave me a chance to highlight my hats, right? Sell them.
All
Sure,
right.
I'll commentate. So I started commentating. Well, what came natural because I watched old movies and loved them is I say, well, in 1940, this is sort of like what Joan Crawford would wear because of the square shouldered, you know, coat. And I would talk about that and it kind of came natural. And it's just like it
Wow.
just mushroomed from there. And then people start asking me the AKAs. I did spoke at a regional conference in downtown years ago for the AKAs, and it was probably about 500 women there. And I mean, I was blessed because I had hats for sale, and with them being from out of town, they want to buy stuff, that's from Detroit. And at the same time, it opened up other doors. Well, can you speak on the history of hats at my event? Or can you talk about the history of hats for the museum? And so that's how the doors open up, and I
Yeah.
ended up
You
launching hat moments with that.
I love that because you are really showing and proving how we can take our talents, our gifts, and our abilities and do something great in the earth. And taking the hats and talking about the history, Joan Crawford. I mean, I don't think about hats that way, honestly, because I'm one of those women who won't even wear a hat. But I did hear Monica say that she loved wearing hats, but because now she has the lens. So it just goes to show you how you can take something and bless others with and inspire them. Here we have some people that are talking to us. Hey, Robin. Wilson says, hello, ladies. We
Hello,
have
Robin. Hi,
Deb,
Robin.
Anthony. I love how both ladies' gifts and knowledge is exceptional and brings the natural and spiritual together. All right now.
Oh, thank you.
And Robin says, yes, that's how my grandmother was. She was a millionaire. That is
Awesome.
why I love dress hats today. All right.
All right.
And then we have Sherry Ann. Sherry, I don't know what that.
Oh, that's my Toastmaster, Bloomfield
It
Hills president.
left. I don't know. It was right here. I don't know what just happened.
Oh.
Oh,
And she know, excuse me, Monica,
here
she
it is.
knows you.
We love your
Yes, I
precious
know Sherry.
analogy. Okay, that is wonderful. And oh, okay. So let me ask you this, Monica. Uh, Talking about a season for Linda where she was doing things with her husband and that and having to end that season just temporarily. And today I had an opportunity, and I called Monica up crying like a baby to listen to her story on Twisted Storytellers. And Monica's going to be on there again, and I'm going to let her share about it because she can tell it better than I can. But I was listening to your story, Love Never Dies. And it was just so powerful and inspiring. And I was just trying to talk to Monica about it, but I just lost it, just totally lost it. But the beauty of that love never dies, and you having to go on and experiencing this special love. Can you talk to me about that? Talk to the audience about what that was like for you. And you said earlier about keeping it going. So can you speak to us about that?
The first year that my husband passed, I decided to honor the fact that he had lived, and I decided to travel to a place that we had spoken about, which was Egypt. He had sent me a text the Valentine's Day prior to his passing where he said, we're not done yet. We have so much more to do, and we've got to go to Egypt. And so I decided that's where I'm going. I went back to the hospice where he passed, and I took treats to the staff. And I actually encountered a family who was going through what I went through, and I let them know that it was going to be okay. I don't even know how I got in there, how I spoke to them, how I got through that, but I managed to. And they told me thank you. And then I ran into someone else in the hospice that I knew, and I didn't know that they had someone there who was passing, and I gave them the same kind of well wishes. So I went to Egypt by myself,
All
and
right.
I told him, I said to my husband, look, okay, I've done these different things. I've been honoring you. But I need to know that you know that I'm doing this. I need to know that you're here with me. And so shortly after I said that, be careful what you ask for. My cell phone, I thought, was acting up. So it was taking photographs of my screen, my cover photo of the two of us together. And it was weird because there was the two of us looking at each other at our second wedding. We had two weddings in the same year. We were in Venice, and it was our second wedding. We were looking at each other, but it lifted up. So he was not as visual in the screen, and it was more me. And I'm looking up at him and he's looking down at me. And that was just weird. But I didn't think about
Wow.
it. I'm thinking the phone was malfunctioning. I kept seeing image after image after image. And so I was erasing them because I didn't want to get rid of all of my data space. And I said, I think I'm supposed to leave this. And so I can still go back to that time and show that all of those screenshots was not me.
Wow.
He did it. So he showed me a sign. So for anyone
Wow.
who believes in signs, I didn't know anything about that, but he gave me signs. And
That's
I believe
awesome.
that was a sign that he said, I'm still with you. I'm here with you. I'm on this journey. I may not be visually with you, but I'm here. And so I always want to share that with other people. When someone passes on, try not to be so sad that you can't make it. Because if it were you, you would want your loved one to keep on. You would want your loved one to be happy.
That's true.
And so that's what they want for us. They want us to keep going. They're probably sad when they see us sad. So that resilience comes in when we believe that they're with us on the journey, just not in the way that we want them to be with us. So that's
Yeah.
how I got through. And Satori Shakur was the person who curated my story, talking about true love never dies. And so she's doing another twisted story. She does it monthly. And her story in March 25th on a Friday, will be virtual. We'll be talking about love hurts. Now, the thing about her stories, or the storytellers that she curates these stories, they don't necessarily have to be the way you think. So it won't necessarily be all about love being painful. There will be twists and turns, and that's why it's called Twisted Storyteller.
I
So I
love
look
that.
forward to it. And it might be a happy story. It may not be a sad story. It may be a
That's
lesson
powerful.
learned from love hurting, but it could
Yeah.
be a positive thing. So I look
Yeah.
forward to it.
That's powerful, and wow, I do believe in signs. I really do. And mine is a little funny because my brother had passed away, and my mom had told me to stop doing something, and my brother would get on me. He was my oldest brother, and my mom told me to stop doing something. I kept going, and the light started flicking. I took off out of that room. I set my behind down. I was like, I think that was Junior. And my mom was like, I told you to sit your butt down. But really, the light started flicking. There was no reason whatsoever that light started flicking like that. And it just started flicking. And yes, I definitely believe in signs. So thank you for sharing that, Monica. And I just want to stick with you for a minute because we're talking about Black women in love. And when you hear that, what does that mean to you, Black women in love?
I am a romantic, and I just believe in true love. I pray and hope that I will experience it again, and that I will have the feelings that I once had from that true love. Now, I'm not expecting my late husband to come back. I'm not expecting another man to fill his shoes or to even be like him. I just want someone that will give me the feelings that I had of contentment, of happiness, of completeness, of love. And I keep hope alive that that will happen again. We as Black women, I think we suffer when it comes to love sometimes because we are given a bad name. Oftentimes we've been through struggle. We had to keep families together. We've had to do this. We've had to do that. We've had to play various roles. And so sometimes we are termed as the mad Black woman, and we don't put up with things that other women put up with. And that right there is unfair because our story is different. Our story is
Yes.
different. And so we come to we come into the story differently. So I love Black men, and I love men who will understand that my story is different and embrace me for it instead of challenging me for it or assuming that I'm the mad Black woman because I have standards
Hmm.
and because I don't won't put up with just anything. That doesn't make me mad. It gives me just it says that I know what I want
Yes.
and I won't accept less. So we get a bad name
Absolutely.
when we stand up for ourselves sometimes like that. And I just hope that our love stories will become like those love stories on the Hallmark Channel. And we can truly have that kind of love.
I know that's
I
right,
hope
Monica.
for that for everyone who's looking for love or experiencing a love that they want to go deeper. I
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah, I'll come back to you because on the Twisted Storytellers, you said, I didn't get a knight in shining armor. I got a general.
That's right.
Yes, that was
That's right.
powerful. That was powerful. And so, Linda, Monica's right. As Black women, we can get a bad rap. On last week, I had Zanelle and Anita and Lauren on the show, Lori. And one of the things that was said is that assumptions are made about us. And that's really what Monica spoke to. Assumptions are made about us. Like, for instance, she said, being an attorney, she'll walk into some places and they'll say, oh, uh, like she knew someone or she got where she is because of affirmative action. And I remember when I was in politics, wasn't even paying attention, and a Caucasian woman walked up to me and said, is your father a judge? And then walked away to insinuate like I was nothing. So have you had any of those experiences, and or how do you hear Black woman in love?
Well, I have heard of those type of experiences and know that Black women have been seen as this angry Black woman. That's been something that I've been hearing for so long, and it's perceptions people have, and perceptions are real to some people, and so they walk with that and really believe it. But I know one thing overall, we have to really know who we are so that we're not embracing those perceptions and those what people are bringing to us. I am so blessed that I experienced a loving marriage for 30 years, was just shy of 30 years of marriage. And I actually didn't think that I would marry again. In fact, I continued to wear my ring. I didn't want anyone looking. I wanted to look married. I
Okay,
just
okay.
didn't. But about 3 years later, it's like my heart opened back up. I was literally driving home from work one day. It was a beautiful summer day. The sun was shining through the trees, and I just looked up through the window as I was driving down the road, and I just said, Lord, I said, oh God, I said, I want to love and be loved again. And that's just really what came out of my mouth. And I told a friend of mine who had also been widowed, and she was a tremendous help to me. And she had been widowed a year before. And let me take a little backstory. I was visited a church at that time, and when I walked in, they had a kiosk, and they had this card in there, and it said, um, a ministry for those who have lost their spouses. It was called Living On. And I thought, really, a ministry at a church for those who lost a spouse? I couldn't believe it. So I grabbed the card and I went on in the church. I was visiting and I went on in the service. I ended up joining that church later on, but I ended up meeting a woman who was part of that ministry. Well, they would meet quarterly. And I remember going, this is in my story. I went in and I met the lady who was in charge of it. And she says, oh, you're going to meet Teresa one day. She was also widowed, but she's engaged to be married again. And this is literally was my reaction. I said, oh, that's nice for her. I mean, I literally kind of had this little, like, and she just said, okay. Well, she was the one that teased me when she was seeing that I was engaged, a couple of years later, because I did fall in love again and met a wonderful man, and married in 2014. We're going on 8 years.
All right, congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that, Linda. And you are part of a book, an anthology, right?
Yes,
You and
Monica
Monica
as well.
both.
We're
Go
both of
ahead.
it. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's called A Widow's Resilience. There are
Yes.
15 authors in it. Monica and Linda are both a part of it. Um, and to know that you are remarried, and you still tell your story. That's really powerful because sometimes women can feel like they have to shut down parts of their lives. So tell me and tell us as women, how do we keep those other parts of our lives available? Because those are our stories as well.
Well, you know what? No one gets rid of their history. You know, if a very wealth, if Mrs. Ford of Ford Motor Company, you know, a very well-known person, their husband passed, she's still known as Ford. You know what I mean? She may remarry, or Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy, or other named people out here that was just popped in my head. But your history is your history, and it never goes away. And it does not take away from your new love, because you still have history and a story to share about your former love. That wouldn't even be fair. I mean, it just wouldn't even make any sense at all to me. And so that part will always be with me. So if someone asks me, and this book opens up doors, or I've met people even before the book came along, and they said, "Oh, my friend's her husband passed. Can you talk to her?" One of the things I noticed, and this was in 2010, when I was widowed. I actually went, I love books and I love libraries. And so I went to the bookstore and I said, let me see if I can find some books about, you know, women who've been widowed. And I didn't like hardly see anything, like a couple things, but they just kind of weren't really relevant. Like, and I thought, oh, well, so I was kind of disappointed. And when Latanya mentioned A Widow's Resilience and asked me to be a contributing writer, I thought, what an opportunity to give back and share my story. All of our stories are different. Monica, mine, everyone's story and experience is different. We experience loss. And I even when I talk about the hat of loss and grief, in general, I realize every audience I have didn't lose a spouse or child, but there are other types of losses. I mean, think
Yes,
about even during this pandemic, people have lost homes, they've lost businesses.
yes,
Loss hurts, period. Okay. And there are various types of loss. And then there's healing that has to take place. I will say that during that time, because of the prayers of my family, dear friends, I was able to wear a hat of strength and a hat of courage during that time that I,
yes, yeah,
was
right.
walking
Yes,
the walk. And we just serve a God that's so amazing. And I just tell people, to watch out, like I mentioned in the book, watch out for triggers, or some things can kind of trigger something. I'll tell you this little story. A colleague of mine was getting married, and this was like a year later after being widowed. And not thinking anything of it, I went to the mall and I was getting a gift. I walked in, things remembered, and I looked around, and I got something engraved for her. Well, I turned around, and by the time my foot hit the exit of things remembered, all of a sudden I felt this weight, and I started feeling very upset. I mean, emotional, extremely. And I said, oh God, I said, please just help me get to the food court. Help me get to the food court. Because it felt like every walk was this heavy weight. And I
mm.
didn't want to break down in a mall. If you break down in a mall, they're going to call security, and
Right.
they
Amen.
are. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then no one would know me, right? Because I'm away from my job. And so really the Lord helped me get there so I could kind of get myself together. And I said, Lord, oh my goodness, I've got to go back in the store and pick it up. I said, Lord, give me the strength and the courage and the fortitude to do this. And he did. And I went back, an hour later, it was like an hour wait, and I got it. And I never had that experience again. But then when I thought about it later, I went into a store called Things Remembered, right? But I didn't think about it at the time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but God
Okay.
is always there to help us, to strengthen us, to undergird us
I
every
love
step of the
that.
way. He really
Yeah.
is. And no matter what we're going through, with his strength, we're able to wear a hat of confidence, faith, and courage to move forward. It's not in our
Yeah. And
comfort.
it
It's
seems
not in
like
our
a
comfort.
seems like a hat of healing too. I
There
love
you
that.
go. Hat of healing. It's so many. Yeah, that's in
Yes.
there too. A hat of
Yeah.
healing, a hat of forgiveness, a hat of, oh yes, so many. A
Yes, so
hat of
many
love,
hats.
like Monica mentioned earlier, a hat of love.
Yes,
Yes,
a hat of love. So
yes.
we have someone that says women's rights was a mistake. Okay, patriarch E built the Western world. Um, so I'm not really sure. Does she want you guys to kind of elaborate on that, or I'm sorry, elaborate on that? But if you have any comments, just let me know. And I'm sorry, I'm a little behind. This says whatever we said. Robin agreed. This is so true. Robin, I'm gonna try to do a better job. As a Black woman, I think that we are not always given space to simply be human. That means experiencing and expressing the range of human emotions. I second that. Okay. And here's Robin again. If it's okay for other women to experience and express sadness, anger, fear, and joy, it is okay for Black women to do the same. All of these emotions are a part of the human experience. I
Thank
love
you.
that.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Robin. That excuse me, I have to say that was a great comment because that's my thing in general. We are women, period. We are humans, period. So we're all going to experience all types of feelings and emotions. It's inevitable because we're all created the same. We all look
Yeah.
different, but we all have everything else the same, and no one can get away from that.
Yes. Thank you for that, Linda. So Monica, um, you love Hallmark and you are, you love romance. And so, the stories of the knight in shiny armor, and instead you got a general, and what can you say, to the women who are looking for that knight in shiny armor? And you talked about keeping hope alive. And there's so many women because like 80% of single Black women, particularly mothers, are single. 80% of women single are single mothers. So how would you, speak to the women who love romance and they want it and they desire it?
The most important thing is to first love yourself. And when you love yourself unapologetically,
Love it.
unapologetically, you will open yourself up possibly to the right person. I believe that that right person will find you, find me, find those of us who are still single by being our best selves. It's funny, my husband found me when I wasn't looking. And that's when it always happens. It seems like when you're surprised or when you least expect that right person to come into your life. So when you build a life of doing things that make you happy, that person will come along. It might be when you're doing something that you love and all of a sudden you find him there and you didn't even realize he was there. I just believe those things happen and it will happen. I got married when I was 48. So there were women who were older who said they thought that right person would never come into their life. Well, I'd given up hope and was just living my best life, and he appeared. So when you do you, he'll find you. And I'm hoping that
I
for
love
me
that.
too.
It
Yeah, I
will.
love that. I
It's gonna
love that
happen, Monica.
because
Yeah.
even Linda had mentioned that earlier, loving ourselves, being our best self. And what I'm hearing in that, Monica, that don't allow yourself to become bitter. Become better. Don't. Linda mentioned unforgiveness. I'll let you speak to that. It seems like you want to say something to that.
Was that Monica?
Yeah, Monica,
Go ahead.
about
Oh,
not
I was just
being
listening
bitter.
to
I'm
you.
sorry.
I was
I'm
agreeing,
sorry. I'm sorry.
but true. Of course, we can't be bitter. I am so happy that Linda has found love, and Latanya Orr, who was the editor of our book, she found love again, and yet she was a person who put together a widow's resilience. So, although I'm happy for them, and I'm keeping hope alive because
Yes.
they are happy again, and I really want to ask them, well, how did that come about? How were you able to have another love come in and how did it happen? I want to know that part of Linda's story and Latanya's story because it's not easy. It's not easy.
We'll talk, Monica.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And seeking help. A lot of times, it's almost like we can't seek help. That we have to struggle alone. That we have to put on this face or this hat, like we're all together. And yet, we need to be okay breaking down. Um, when it's really funny now, but it wasn't funny then when I called Monica earlier today, and I was just talking, and then I fell apart. Monica stayed on the phone with me. She didn't say, "Girl, I need you to stop." this is my story and you need to stop. No, she was like, oh, Regina, stop. You're going to make me cry. It was more like that. It wasn't like I was imposing.
Right.
And sometimes, we can stuff our feelings. Well, so Linda, I'll come to you, encouraging women. That's what you say you inspire. And that's all people. I heard inspiring, motivating, educating. So what would you say for those of us who feel like we have to wear that hat? We have it all together and we want to allow ourselves to become vulnerable.
You know what? I've written this poem and I'm going to share it. I like writing poems and I write poems here and there. And I believe I'll put together a book one day, but it's called Forward Hat.
All
A
right.
hatter, and it starts like this: a hatter, a milliner, both words mean the same. Creators of toppers that cover your mane. But the main thing to know is what goes on at the top is what will flow down from your head to your heart. Thoughts like me, I don't see how I can do that. Yet you're able to accomplish if you just change your hat. So remove and say goodbye to imposters and fatigue, wrong perceptions, hat of fear, and insecurities. You have what it takes to shift and excel, but you've got to use your words to help you propel. For words are powerful, they move you one way or another. That's why negative self talk needs to be smothered and replaced with a hat of confidence and courage, most of all, a faith in God that will carry you forward. And that's what.
Woo-hoo! That is powerful. Thank you so much. Monica, I'm going to let you have the last word. It's time for us to close up, and then I'm going to share your website. And I see some people have written some more. What would you like to leave with the audience today, Monica?
Well, basically, I would say Linda Hannah has summed it all up. And I would just like to add that true love never dies. So, for anyone who has ever loved and lost, that love is still with you, be it a spouse, a child, a friend, a sibling, a parent. That love is still there. And as long as you speak their name and remember them, they live again.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
You ladies are awesome. I just want to give you a hand. Thank you for your resilience. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your lens. Thank you for your hat. Um, you have so much to offer and give to the world. And I just want to thank you for stopping by and depositing what you have right here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here are some comments. I don't know. It said Regina Hall, sorry, didn't see another friend's name popped in. I'm not sure. Okay. Boaz found his wife while she was working in the field. That image shows us that God will often bring us Boaz when we are about our Father's business. God is faithful. All right, sister.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. That's what Barbara said. And then Sherry Ann, love your poem. You ladies make us proud. All right. Phenomenal women. All right. So thank you, ladies, so much for being here. I want to encourage you to go to my website, reginacehall.com. Um, there, these will be posted on my website, so you can go back and listen. You can also go to Enlightened Heart Services, which is my business page, and I put it on my personal page, Regina Hall. These stories that the women have shared today are powerful. I hope you know that, as Monica said, as Linda said, we have to breathe, be comfortable in who we are, and walk in who we are because we are special. We are loved and we have so much to offer. We are made with a purpose. And no matter adversities, they're going to come. Trials and tribulations, they're going to come. And loss, they're going to come. But it's all in how we respond to it. I hope you all have been blessed today. And please listen again. I'm going to share Monica's information. I think it's going to be hers first. Yep. So you can reach Monica Morgan at Motivation Speak. She's a motivational speaker and photographer at Monica at monicamorganspeaks.com. Again, that's Monica Morgan, motivational speaker and photographer, Monica at monicamorganspeaks.com. And then we have Linda Hannon. motivational speaker, www.hatmoments.com. You can reach her at 248-426-HAT. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in. I am headed off to Cairo, Egypt.
Wow.
So I'll be back in March and we'll
All
do
right.
this again.
All
Here,
right.
we have
Thank
a
you.
comment. Yes,
Thank
and she
you.
said, thank you, ladies, for sharing. Thank you for commenting and thank you for being here today with us.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye.